Hi, I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com. Low inflation measurements are having some repercussions for older adults. Joining me to share some insights into this topic is Morningstar contributor Mark Miller. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Christine.
So one thing that obviously probably jumped out at a lot of seniors this year is the fact that they're not getting a cost of living adjustment for 2016. Why is that?
Yeah, it's something people are always upset about. I shouldn't say always. It's only happened a few times in the history of the program since automated COLAs were created back in the mid-'70s. This is only the third time. But yeah, it's the measure of inflation that is used, which is a very broad market basket of goods, and it doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, reflect the market basket of goods and services that seniors buy, which tend to be more heavily influenced by healthcare, which has higher inflation. But with energy prices falling as they have in the last year, the CPI numbers are flat, and so the cost of living adjustment for Social Security is flat as a result of that. It's just an automatic calculation under the law.
Okay, so seniors, though, arguably have benefited less from the decline in transport costs than have people who are commuting and maybe...
Yeah, I think I'd put it slightly differently because I think driving patterns and so on are different for different people who might be on Social Security. I would say, yeah, we really put it the other way, that seniors are more affected by other types of inflation. And healthcare inflation is back up to running 7-8% a year now. And seniors consume more healthcare services than the rest of the general population. So there are several areas that tend to differ. And I think there's pretty wide agreement that, you know, if you look at the difference, there's an experimental inflation indicator that the Labor Department has been tracking for quite a while now called the CPI-E, E for elderly. And when you look at how that has performed over the past 20 years, it has outpaced more general inflation by, I think, 4 to 5 percentage points.
In part because it puts a higher weighting on those healthcare costs.
Yes, cumulatively it's running 5% higher than general inflation over the last couple of decades. So there's a strong case to be made here that the way we're measuring inflation right now for purposes of Social Security adjustments certainly, you know, should be revisited.
Okay. There are a lot of other figures that are staying the same because of the current CPI calculation. Let's discuss some of those. So retirement plan contributions, for example. Right.
So retirement plan, all these figures are affected by the same COLA determination. So the maximum contribution to your 401k stays at $18,000 next year. The maximum for an IRA remains at $5,000 or $6,000 for catch-up contributions for those over 50. Back on the Social Security side, the maximum amount of pay that is subject to the payroll tax remains the same at $117,500. That won't, usually that's adjusted usually in a round number to reflect inflation, but it'll stay the same next year.
Okay. One other area that has been affected by this flatlining CPI is Medicare Premiums. Let's talk about that because I think that's kind of counterintuitive, or people might not imagine that there's any relationship there.
This one has been complicated and really a mess in Washington this year. There's a provision in the law called the hold harmless provision that basically says anybody who's receiving Social Security and is also on Medicare will not receive a negative reduction in their Social Security benefit due to any increase in the Medicare premium. So here we were talking just a minute ago about the difference between general inflation and healthcare inflation. And healthcare inflation has started to accelerate again in the last 12 months or so, and the projections suggest it's going to continue to do so. Healthcare inflation was running pretty flat for a while. So in the case of there's this complex interaction between the Medicare Part B premium, which is the premium that pays for covers outpatient services, and the Social Security benefit. If you're on Social Security, your Part B premium is deducted from Social Security. If you're on Social Security, the law says no matter what the premium increase is, it can't go up more than the COLA, so that you shouldn't have a net reduction. So this year, the Medicare actuaries projected a really large increase in the Part B premium from $104 and change this year to just under $160. It's a massive 52% increase. Well, 70% of Medicare enrollees are on Social Security. They would have been held harmless against that 52% increase. They would have stayed at 104, and they will stay at 104. But because of the way that the program is structured, that increase in cost has to go somewhere. And beneficiaries pick up 25% of total Part B program costs. The other 75% come from an array of other government revenue sources. So that entire increase was going to be on the shoulders of the 25% who weren't held harmless, which is the reason it was going to go up to 160, again, a distorted amount of an increase. So, you know, people obviously screaming bloody murder about that. And a solution was crafted as part of the budget deal that was just signed into law by the president, where that increase was mitigated. It wasn't completely rolled back, but it was taken back to just over $120 plus a $3 monthly surcharge. So instead of going up to 160, it's going to go up to 120 and change, which is better than nothing, but still people will not be happy to see that.
So there's a long list of people who are going to be affected by this. Let's talk about some of the categories of individuals who should keep this on their radar.
Yeah, the list of people who are not held harmless is kind of interesting, I think. It includes the following. One, anybody who has decided to delay filing for Social Security. So you could be 65 and enrolled in Medicare, but deciding to wait for very good reasons to start your Social Security benefits. You want to get the higher benefits down the road. A certain group of federal retirees who participated in the old civil service retirement system and therefore weren't on Social Security also are affected. Newer federal employees are all in the federal thrift savings program, and they do participate in Social Security. Many state government workers around the country who have pension programs but are not in Social Security are impacted by this. Anybody who enrolls in Medicare for the first time next year will automatically go to the new premium. Low-income people who are dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid are subject to the new higher premium, but they don't actually pay it because state governments pay it out of the Medicaid program. So state governments were one of the groups who were lobbying for some relief on this because it was going to hit their state Medicaid budgets pretty hard. And then the last group is the higher income beneficiaries who are already paying these income adjusted Part B premiums, higher levels, also are not in the held harmless groups, and their premiums are going to go up next year as well. So it's an interesting group, and I think one of the questions that this leads to, what just happened, is do we need to re-examine this hold harmless structure? I think it's very well intentioned, and it certainly makes sense that the 70% are held harmless. But especially with Medicare and Social Security no longer being synchronous, it used to be everybody went on both at 65.
Right.
There's this whole group of people now outside of that because they've decided for whatever reason not to be on Social Security yet. So that raises some questions, as well as just a fairness question for these government workers who aren't in Social Security. I don't know why they should necessarily be subject to huge Medicare premium increases simply because they're not on Social Security. I mean, they're subject to the same laws of inflation as the rest of us. So, I would hope that actually there'd be some discussion now that things settle down on this. It would be great to have some discussion about whether it's time to re-examine how the hold harmless things work.
So kind of revisit whether there's some sort of legislative fix that could more permanently address.
Right. It might well be that whenever we do the next round of Medicare reform in a bigger context, because there are certainly broader sets of issues around Medicare that should be examined, that maybe this could be in the mix as part of that.
Okay, Mark, complicated topic. Thank you so much for being here to share
My pleasure.
your insights. Thanks for watching. I'm Christine Benz from Morningstar.com.